Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome, world. Welcome once again to Tuesday Talk with Key West Lou. I am your host, Louis Patrone. Welcome again to another week. A lot of things happened this week. Some things you may not be aware of. Some things you may only know little about. There is much going on in the outside world, especially in this country, that the media does not share with us. And the media does not share it with us because the media is corporate controlled, and the word comes down, we'll let the people know this, but we won't let them know that. So I'm going to talk about some of these things and hopefully make you aware of some things that are going on or, fill you in on things you already know. 6 weeks ago, I wrote my newspaper column. I write a weekly column for Conch Life here in Key West, and the title of the column Is the United States Ready for War? My position basically was in the article that it isn't ISIS we must worry about or Al-Qaeda. We have to have concern. But they'll be taken care of in due course. We always come around to taking care of that type enemy and resolve the problem. The more important problem involves Russia and China. And you see how Russia is acting in the last few months. Right now, what are they doing? They're over in Syria bombing away. They give us 1 hour's notice that Putin is putting his chest out. He's playing tough guy, king of the mountain. He feels no one's going to stand in his way. And the only trouble with all this is it is a gigantic bluff. You heard me. It's a bluff. Because if push comes to shove, Russia can't back up their action. I'm talking about military power. Now, let me give you some examples. It was announced just 2 days ago that Russian planes are breaking down in Syria. You heard me. Russian planes are breaking down in Syria. 1/3 of the attack jets and 1/2 of the transport planes that Russia has in Syria, 1/3 of their attack jets, 1/2 of their transport planes are grounded. They don't work. They don't have, I'm laughing, they don't work. They don't have the materials to put in to repair where there is a problem. They don't know how to handle the dust in the area and so forth. As a result of which, all these airstrikes they were going to do are dropping in number. Let's take a look for a moment at the Russian Navy. I wrote 6 weeks ago that the Russian Navy is antiquated. It is referred to by military people as geriatric. Okay, because their ships are of World War II vintage. They don't have a Navy. Their Navy's all old ships. They can't move fast. A couple of months ago, there was some sort of get-together with some Chinese naval vessels, and they were doing someplace in some ocean a joint situation together, and the Russian ships couldn't keep up with the Russian ships could not keep up with the Chinese ships. The United States spends $60 billion a year on its military, $60 billion a year. Russia only spends $6 billion a year. Now, how the hell can they compete with us? $6 billion as opposed to $60 billion. Putin is bluffing. The world knows Putin is bluffing. Okay? The European papers know Putin is bluffing. The only place we don't know Putin might be bluffing is here in the United States, because we're not apprised of some of the details I just shared with you. Why? I don't know. I'll tell you this. Obama has to stand up to Putin at some point. And this is poker playing. Putin's playing poker, and Obama has to play poker, and he's either got to have the full hand or he's got to outfox him. I believe we have to call the situation and call Putin's bluff, because he can't back up his action. It's that simple. The only way he can back up his action is if he has a relationship with China. Now, if China is going to back Russia in any big deal event, Then there is a problem because Russia has been moving their ass in the last 5 years. They have constructed, and they got out there in the oceans of the world, 325 new naval vessels. They have built airfields on islands that don't exist in the South China Seas. They are actually creating islands, putting on them airfields, and housing for the people who are going to be involved with these airfields. Right now, China has developed new missiles that take nuclear warheads, and from anywhere in the China Sea, of certain of their new naval vessels, they can hit any city in the United States. The problem is we don't have a comparable missile from the United States that can hit anything they've got in the South China Sea or in China. But the worst problem is we do not have a defense to China's new missiles. We have not developed one yet. So the only place Russia comes out on top is if China backs them. Now, will China do that? I don't know. All I know is that since we imposed these sanctions 2 years ago on Russia, the United Nations, and so forth, we are breaking the economy. The world, the free democracies are breaking the economy of Russia. They're in trouble financially. They can't afford a war. They can't afford new planes and new ships, or they would have them. But China and Russia in the last 2 years have agreed to have 3 new oil pipelines built between Russia and China, and 2 new railways. Now, this sort of indicates that China is supporting Russia. But the bottom line right now is Russia can't back up their action. At the very least, we, the people of the United States, should know this. We shouldn't have to guess or be told by me or read it in a European newspaper. I want to talk about Germany now. Germany and the Muslims. We know that immigration is taking place on a major scale. Millions of people are escaping Syria, are escaping North Africa. These are Muslims. They want to get away from war in both places, and they're going to Europe. Everyone wants to go to Germany. Germany has the best going, the greatest economy right now in Europe, and they all feel they can get a job there. The trouble is too many people at one time. You have hundreds of thousands of these Muslim immigrants that have already entered Germany. And they have problems in Germany because they just can't cope with 100,000 people a day or 25,000 people a day. How do you feed them? How do you clothe them? Where do they sleep? What toilets do they use? Do you have enough toilets? How do they get their medical? All right, so there's a problem out there. And it's being evidenced right now in German hospitals and emergency rooms, okay? Total chaos. The emergency rooms in the hospitals are overcrowded with the Muslim sick, all right? The Muslim sick. And what's happened is everything in the hospital and in the pharmacies is screwed up because these people, these immigrants, want everything free. They will not pay for hospitalization. They don't want to pay for medicines that they need. And they stand there and they take them away. Do you know these German hospitals now are guarded by police officers with trained dogs? That's how bad things have become. Now, when these immigrants come from Syria and North Africa, especially North Africa in this instance, they bring with them germs and diseases that the German hospitals are not able to cope with. They bring things like AIDS, syphilis, open TB, and exotic diseases. I don't even know what they are. But what they're also bringing with them are diseases which the modern world has found a cure for between 50 and the last 100 years. So, people get a shot today, and this disease no longer exists. People don't come down with these various diseases. But they are bringing these diseases, which we have eliminated, into Germany. And Germany and the entire world does not have the vaccines and the medicines to combat these diseases they are bringing. They cannot cope with them. Another problem in the German hospitals is the immigrants who are Muslims refuse to be treated by female medical staff. doctors and nurses, because it's against the rules under the Muslim religion, apparently, to have a female take care of you when you're sick, I guess, if you are a man. That's creating a problem, insufficient staffing now. The immigrants have been physically attacking staff in the hospitals, especially the North Africans. Now, our media, did you hear it on television? Have you read this in the newspaper? Our media fails to report this to us. And it's because Angela Merkel, I love Angela Merkel, and I don't really. I think she's disruptive. They portray her as a strong woman. She plays hard-ass, but she's a very disruptive woman. This woman was raised in East Germany. She was raised as a communist, in effect. And she's tough. She's like Putin, boy. She's got breast testicles as a woman. So what has she done now? She doesn't want this to go out over the media. No television, no newspaper reports on this stuff. And that's what's happened. The world has not heard about what's happening in these German hospitals, because God forbid it's going to happen in every country's hospitals as these people come into different countries. And the way the word has gotten out is through social media. These people they're no different than ISIS. They use Facebook. They use Twitter. They use Instagram. They use all the social media to get the word out what is happening in the German hospitals. The German people do it. The immigrants do it. So the word has gotten out. It's become so bad that the word is getting out over the internet. Nothing's a secret anymore. That Angela Merkel went to Facebook's Zuckerberg. Yep, she went to the CEO of Facebook and said, hey, we've got a problem here. This stuff's getting out, and it's not healthy for our country in helping to resolve the problem. Zuckerberg apparently said, no problem. As I understand it, Facebook has a program that determines which messages are what's happening in the hospitals, and that these messages are automatically, would you believe this, automatically removed, withdrawn, expunged from Facebook before they even get out into the social media of the world. And she's stopping it because she doesn't want the world to know how bad these things are. Because if it gets out, then nobody's going to want to take these immigrants in. And as you recall, Germany is pushing to have every country take a certain number in. Now I want to talk about a subject that is close to my heart, Social Security. Here's the story. I'm 80 years old. I'm on Social Security. But I'm not ashamed to take it. Since the day I started paying taxes as a lawyer in 1961, I have paid the maximum in every year till I was 71. I didn't start taking Social Security till 71 because I was still working. I didn't take Medicare because I had a great plan in my firm, etc. But I paid in. I'm not going to get all my money back, but I want that check every month. It's mine. It belongs to everyone who's done what I did. Here's the problem. This year, not this year, but next year, it was announced this week that in 2016, Social Security will not have a cost of living increase. No cost of living increase. Now, this sucks. This happened a few years ago for 2 or 3 years. You have 65 million people that are on Social Security, 65 million people who are going to be shortchanged. Understand this. A cost of living increase is like $2 to $3 a month. That's all. It's the principle of the thing, and to some people, $2 or $3 a month might mean a lot. Okay. What bothers me the most is not they're not going to give the cost of living increase. Are the people in our Congress and our government and our citizens, whether Democrat or Republican, who think Social Security is terrible and we shouldn't live off this program and it's breaking the government, it makes us a large welfare state, and we just can't help it. We're bringing the economy of the United States down because there is a Social Security program. Let me tell you something, my folks. I wrote an article on this. I did a TV show on this, I think, 4 or 5 years ago. And so this is merely repetition tonight. This is all fact, okay? The United States owes $17 trillion, soon to go to $18 trillion. A lot of money. I don't even know how many zeros it takes, but we owe $17 trillion. Now, do you know who the biggest creditor of the United States is? Your reaction initially would be to say China. We're always borrowing money from China. Well, we owe China $1.3 trillion. 1.3. However, China is not the biggest creditor. We have a creditor that the United States owes $3 trillion to, and guess who that creditor is? It's Social Security. Hear what I'm saying. This is gospel fact. Back when Clinton was president and Newt Gingrich was Speaker of the House, while they were Gingrich is trying to impeach Clinton, the two of them were working together to balance the budget. What bipartisanship. Amazing that this happened. And Clinton and Gingrich says, every year we take in more on Social Security than we pay out. Yes, that's how it was. And it's like that today, by the way. They take in more today than they pay out. And that money's been accumulating. And, at that time it was 2-point-something trillion because they take it every year. It's now up to $3 trillion. He says, let's take that money and we can balance the budget with that 2-point-something or $3 trillion. So they did. And the paperwork says, this is our Social Security money that we paid him. It says that there is no legal obligation to pay this money back. We do recognize it, we, the United States, that we owe the money, and they give an IOU to Social Security, not even a bank note of some kind that you could take to a bank and turn into cash. It's like an IOU. And the government's never paid it back or any part of it. And they continue taking the money. That's why there is not enough money in Social Security. It bugs the hell out of me that there are congressmen today, many of them, probably better than half of them, who don't know what I just told you. It's all out there. They don't know. They don't care. They say we're breaking the backs of the government economically, us people who take Social Security. Something's got to be done. We got to change the rules for it. We don't have to change anything. In fact, there are plans out there that if the government takes 30 years to pay us back the $3 trillion, the obligation will be removed from the bank. But they got to pay it back. They never will pay it back. But don't say we're killing the economy. We're making it a problem. We are the biggest creditor. Unfortunately, our president and Speaker of the House at the time, they took the money, set it up so we can't legally take the government to court and get them to pay back this debt. It's a moral obligation they owe. They should pay it back, and they should stop arguing. I hate it when a congressman gets on TV and says, they didn't do anything for this money. This isn't their money. They're breaking our economy. They don't know how Clinton and Newt Gingrich took the money, just took it. And no one talks about it today. There have to be knowledgeable people who know about this. Some of our TV commentators. Nobody talks about it. I don't understand. Now I'm going to talk about Ben Carson, the gentleman who is running he wants the Republican nomination to run for President of the United States. This is a retired, 18 years, retired neurosurgeon, brain man. He was a neurosurgeon in pediatrics. He took care of children with severe brain problems where he had to perform. He had to operate. And from what I've read about this man, he performed some far-reaching and first-time type brain surgeries that saved a lot of people, a lot of kids. Now, I don't know if being a good doctor and a good brain surgeon would make you a good president, just like I don't know with Trump if a good contractor is going to make a good president. But that's not what I'm going to talk about now. Ben Carson this past week came out clearly that he is anti-abortion. He would not even permit abortion whether it's rape or incest. I find this hard to understand. A woman gets raped, she gets pregnant. She doesn't know the guy who raped her, the thug who raped her. She doesn't want his kid. She's got to have his kid if Carson has his way. What about incest? A father impregnates an 8, 9, 10, 11-year-old girl, and she gets pregnant. Now this girl's got to have her father's child, and you know how the gene situation is. Could very well be a mentally deficient child. What are we doing to this young girl who got screwed by her father? The government is now screwing her if we won't give her the opportunity to abort that child. Now, Carson does say, though, there is an exception. He says there are rare cases. If it involves the mother's health, if the mother's going to die unless we do something, then I would permit abortion of the fetus. Well, to me, there is an inconsistency here. If the fetus is life, and it's life in a rape situation, and it's life in an incest situation, then it's life even if the mother's health is in danger. And so if you believe that that is life and it is killing to abort it, then across the board, I'm raising my voice, but it's true, across the board, the thinking has to be the same. This is life. Now, if there's a situation where the mother could die and the fetus would live, well, it's not for us to make that choice. It's for God. And you have to wait and see what happens. And the baby lives fine. If the mother dies, it was God's will, or vice versa. Or if they both die, that was God's will. If you're going to have a position, you're anti-abortion, you have it in every case. You have no exceptions. Now, I approve of abortion. That's the way I think, and many women think that way in this country. All I'm saying is, you want to be my president, fine. Take a position, be all the way down the road on it. You can't pick and choose. It doesn't work that way. The other thing is, Carson advocates that Roe v. Wade be overturned. 50 years later, he wants to overturn, as many Republicans do, Roe v. Wade, which gave women the right to an abortion. All right, where are we going now? We are moving on to, this is interesting. This is very interesting. My column in Conk Life this week, which hits the newsstands at 5 tomorrow afternoon, is Boudica Warrior Woman. Now, you probably never heard of Boudica. And I'll tell you why I wrote this story this week, because even though what I'm going to share with you occurred in 60 A.D., all right, 60 years after the birth of Christ, less than 30 years after his death, okay? Gender discrimination and where women are being treated as second-class citizens, and brutality in war, because we have gender discrimination problems today, and we have brutality big time in war today. Well, Boudica, she was the queen. Her husband was king. She was queen of Iceni, I-C-E-N-I. Iceni was like a community or a county in Great Britain. Great Britain at the time, and for centuries, was controlled and under the domination of Rome. Rome would send the legions in after they'd conquered these various municipalities, communities, whatever you want to call them. You can't call it, they weren't really countries. But they would send their legions in, and the legionnaires would become the government. There was an exception, though. Rome said that if the king, the present king, will agree, he pledges his allegiance to Rome, and he won't do anything to upset the apple cart, we will permit him to continue as king, enjoy the benefits, he and his family, of being king, but when he dies, the title to the property automatically vests in Rome. That's the end of the dynasty. The queen, whatever happens to her, they were not concerned. Well, the king died. The wife said, hey, my husband left a will, and he left Iceni to Rome, to me, and to my 2 daughters. So I have a legal claim to it. Understand, talk gender discrimination. This was a time when women could not hold title to property. And here the husbands are giving the wife and daughters title to a whole country, as you would say, or community. And she got upset. She got very upset. And Rome sent the legions in. Nero, at the time, was emperor. The guy who fiddled as Rome burned. Nero was emperor of Rome. And when they came to depose, in effect, Boudica, what they did was they weren't nice to her. because they didn't treat women nice in those days. And in some countries today, they don't treat women nice. But they flogged her publicly. And this is what bothered her the most. They raped her 2 daughters publicly. The rapes of the 2 daughters publicly. Well, she got pissed off, let me tell you, big time. And she took the people of Iceni and some nearby communities, and she formed an army, 100,000 strong. Yes, and she went on a rampage, and she was knocking the shit out of the Romans. It's the only way to put it. In 3 separate wars, 3 separate communities or battles, she knocked the hell out of them. That's why, and Nero said, I want out. Get me out of Great Britain. We're not going to keep any soldiers in there. This woman's nuts. All right? Well, just so happened, when he was saying that, some Roman general finally beat her. She committed suicide rather than be captured, like Cleopatra, put her hand in the basket and had the ass bite her. This woman took poison and died rather than face the justice of Rome, which would have been a terrible death for her. Now, I talked about this primarily, not just gender discrimination. I talked about it because of the brutality evidence then. We are looking at ISIS today, who is doing terrible things to those people they capture. I mean, they're doing crucifixions, hangings. They cut the heads off of people. My God, what they're doing. Well, in those days, they did the same thing. It's a great story. What goes on today went on 2,000 years ago, more than 2,000 years ago. They had rapes, both sides, her side, Boudica's side, and the Roman legions. They did rapes, flogging, killings, beheadings, throat cuttings, hangings, burned people alive in crucifixions. Turned out that the queen, Boudica, was one step better than the Romans. She really was irritated about losing her country and her getting flogged and her daughters being publicly raped, so that when they went through these 3 big battles that she won, there were Roman women, Roman noble women left in these communities because some of the legions of Rome were in these communities. These are all like separate little countries. And you know what she did to the Roman women in retaliation for what was being done to her people? She spiked the noble women. She put a spike between their legs and shoved it up. This was all done publicly, by the way. Then she had their breasts cut off, and the severed breasts were sewed to the lips of these women. That's hard stuff. And this is what she did, and she finally got caught, and she committed suicide. Again, why did I write about it? I wanted people to understand this brutality. My God, this has been going on forever. This doesn't justify it. It's got to stop. We're supposed to be civilized. And both sides did it, and this gender discrimination went to more than women could not inherit property, and it's all in the article. Read my article. I hope I've given you a degree of interest so you would take a look at it. Where are we now? I'm going to go quick on this last one. My time's running. 2 weeks ago, on Friday night, just after midnight, a 2-year-old boy was found wandering barefoot in Love Park in Philadelphia. Turns out he was a homeless child, 2 years old. His parents were sleeping under some sort of public building in the park that was on, it was set up above the ground. They put some cardboard in where there were no walls to keep warm. Everybody sleeping. The kid woke up, took off. The parents didn't know. There is a picture floating on the internet of the boy, 2-year-old boy with his head on the police officer's shoulder. Pathetic. Will touch your heart. Will break your heart. After the social services and the police made their investigation, they determined the parents weren't responsible. That guy couldn't get a job. The husband, the father, he had a hard time, and this was it. And you know what the people of Philadelphia did? They got together. They put together enough money, donations. They rented a house for this family for a whole year. They're going to pay the gas, the electric, and the rent and the water. God bless America. Okay, that's the show for this week. Thank you for joining me. Come back next week again if you enjoy what I'm talking about. As you know, the show is archived on Blog Talk Radio and YouTube, and you can also pick it up as of tomorrow morning. It is automatically linked to my Key West Lou website. Thank you for joining me. Look forward to being with you again next week.